7 o'clock. So welcome to Books and Bars. My name is Jeff Kamen. I have a great co-host tonight. Angela Smith is going to be helping us out. So she can jump in whenever she wants and help us with the conversation. If you've never done this before, you can raise your little blue hand. There's a button down in your participant, depending on what device you're using. And you will be listed for me in the order that your hand has been raised. I will call on you, ask to unmute you, and then you can make your comment or ask your question. You know what? We all read the book, but we all read a different book. So I would love to hear what you guys thought of The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. So please don't be afraid to share your perspectives on this book tonight. I'll tell you a little bit about things. If I see is Beth Burns here, though, I got to start with Beth Burns. Beth, are you with us? I'm looking for you. I'm going to let you start with a little bit about the friends. Let me search and see if she's in the room or not. It's like the old days when we would meet in person. Oh, okay, it looks like Beth is not here yet. Angela, if you see Beth show up before I do, let me know. We'll let Beth jump in when she's here, but it looks like she's not here yet. So I will start with a little bit about Brit Bennett. Brit was born and raised in Southern California. She graduated from Stanford University and later earned her MFA in fiction at the University of Michigan. You know what, Michigan, really important state right now. I'm proud of Michigan, where she won a Hopwood Award in graduate short fiction. In 2014, she received the Hudson Wright Award for college writers. She's a National Book Foundation 5 Under 35 honoree. And her debut novel, The Mothers, was a New York Times bestseller. Love to hear if any of you read The Mothers also and what you thought of it. So please share that with us tonight. Vanishing Half is her second novel. It was an instant #1 New York Times bestseller. And her essays have been featured in the New Yorker, New York Times Magazine, Paris Review, and Jezebel. Yeah, she is really young. And I was impressed with, I think, how she captures mother-daughter relationships, sister relationships, and seems wise beyond her years. I would not have believed she is only, early 30s for the way she wrote this. It just feels like someone who's maybe lived a bit more, or maybe even has, a few kids. It's just, I don't know. I was impressed with it. This book really captivated me and kept me guessing, and I had no clue where it was going to go, and it was mysterious. So yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. But what did you guys think? Does anyone have any fresh takes? Anyone just finish it maybe today? Want to tell us what you would rate it? Maybe something you loved about it? Anything that worked for you? Anyone want to start us on a positive note? Just raise your blue hand and I'll call on you. Otherwise, maybe Beth Burns is here. I'll call on Beth Burns. Nope, not here yet. Okay.
No.
Well, she's going under an alias.
While we're waiting for the blue hands, I will say I thought this was a super fun read. I mean, for the topic and all of that stuff, it was. I started it on the plane back from Nevada, and I was almost halfway done by the time I got back. It was just really intriguing, and it kept me reading. And I thought that even though the stories bounced around, it was still super easy to follow, and the timeline was easy to follow too. Versus, I feel like some of the other books that we've read have gone back and forth. So,
yeah, thanks, Angela. And I'll tell you, I'm experiencing a little bit of that right now I'm currently reading our next book, The Glass Hotel. And I think it takes a little more concentration. I don't know if any of you have started it or maybe finished it, but both my wife and I are a couple times we have to check in with each other on where we are with it. But I agree with you that with what Bennett wrote here, I felt it was really clear where we were, who we were with. And even though it does span quite a bit of time, which I actually think was one of the major good things about it. I see Andrew and or Lisa has their hand up. I'm always excited to find out which we're going to get to talk to tonight. So I'm going to ask to unmute the happy couple here. And Andrew or Lisa, please talk to us.
I finished the book just a couple of hours ago, and I really enjoyed it. I have to say that the thematic things that were going on, I'm really interested to hear what other people have to say, because I'm not sure how authentic they were or how exactly to register them. But I was telling Lisa that I thought the characters in particular were just really extraordinarily believable for a pretty unbelievable set of circumstances that had to have. I didn't have any problem really accessing any of the characters the way that she wrote them, and they were all fairly strange characters, really, when you think about it. And I thought, really, it was. I would say this is one of the better books I've read from a pure how did the author construct it, put it together, tell the story, regardless of the themes and what she was trying to say to you. I was just really engaged by the story all the way through. I enjoyed the main characters quite a bit. I thought the sisters were very well written. I thought the daughters of the sisters were very well written. I thought the ancillary characters, like Early Jones, was very well written. And I thought she took some really brave moves in there, because you felt like the story was going to go a certain way. It was like, oh, here we go. She's been abused. The husband has hired a private detective that already knew her. There's going to be some awful conflict that's going to happen between these two. And that whole storyline just goes away and they become friends. And it totally focuses on just the family relationships and the difficulties that they have fitting in. And I just thought she did a really nice job of avoiding some of the normal cliches that you would find that she could have gone towards, that I expected her to go towards, and it was unexpected. I didn't think she was going to go the directions that she was going to go in this. So in addition to the characters being really drawing me in, I felt like I was always on my toes as far as exactly where the story was going to go and how it was going to end up. So I just thought it was a well done book.
Thanks, Andrew. Lisa, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I read it for our other book club, and so it's been like 5 books away. So I don't remember what the ending was.
You know what? That actually, I think that'll be one of our big topics tonight, because as much as I enjoyed it, there was almost a little bit of I guess I didn't want it to end. And the end is not really that, I would say, earth-shattering, or maybe like pat or handed to you all wrapped up in a bow like you might want it to be, like the things you hope for, like, oh, they're these cousins are going to be best friends and the sisters are going to get back together and everything. And it's more of like, the cousins are in touch. It ends with the couple, Reese and the names,
Reese and Jude.
Reese and Jude, right?
Swimming in the river.
Right. Reese and Jude swimming in the river. They walk out of that. Is it a wedding or party that they're? Yeah, and they just kind of like. The funeral. Yes.
Adele is the name of the grandmother.
You think it's going to be this big like family reunion, and they're all going to get together because of the funeral, but no. One of the daughters doesn't even come. It says she can't. They're just not super close. They're in touch, but they only find out like about every once in a while. So I don't know. I mean, like the ending was maybe more realistic and maybe not super like feel good satisfying, but
not
to a couple of years
either.
Yeah, I guess not. But to
I didn't remember it. I remember the characters and I remember feeling about the characters, but I could not remember what happened at the end.
But in the same way that you talk about, Andrew, some of the things that that you expected that didn't happen, there wasn't that big like, ooh, the transgender reveal, like what are you going to do now? And you find out, that, and it was just like this relationship was just accepted the way it was between Reese and Jude. They didn't make a big deal. That's not what the book was about, and it's just,
the only character I didn't really like or didn't really engage with very much was Stella's husband Blake, who's who's this a man of his times. He's not necessarily great, he's not necessarily bad, but he's totally clueless this whole time, and you keep wondering. So obviously he's got to find out at some point, and this has got to become some source of tension. But no, it doesn't happen. And I think that's an interesting thing. I mean, I mentioned to Lisa that I felt like a little bit like I was watching a Finding Your Roots episode on PBS without like the big reveal or anything like that. Like, Blake never figured out that he had like a child that became the Queen of England or something like that. It just there's all of these kind of major things that were happening behind the scenes that never get revealed to some of the major characters. And I think maybe that's closer to reality than we think. I don't know.
So speaking of reality, Brit Bennett has said that the inspiration for this came from her mother telling her a story of an actual town that she knew of growing up, where there were a lot of light-skinned Black people who lived in a way that they actually tried to keep their skin light. You know, they would marry white people, and it was really important to them, and that was their reputation. That's what that place was known for. And so whether there were actual people from there that did go on then to pass as white people, I'm not sure. But Brit has said that her mother told her the stories of this town, and it fascinated her. So she started with that as a real life place or idea that she had heard about. And then, it reminds me that there was a question that I had a reader email me about, and I don't know if Tom Z is with us tonight, but Tom asked me a great question that I said I want to pose to you guys. I want to pose to the group. So I'm gonna put that question in the chat right now, and if anyone wants to address it, think about it. That can be sort of, if you don't know what else you want to raise your hand about, this is something to think about right now. But I want to go to Evelyn because her hand has been up for a while. Evelyn, can I unmute you? Are you with us?
Yeah, hi everyone. I actually have not gotten very far into this book at all. I just read basically that page where you find out Reese is transgender. And that I'm glad you brought up the town of Mallard, because I guess that was my question so far. Like I've connected it pretty. This book has given me a bit of a feeling similar to Underground Railroad, where in my head it almost starts with this construction of Mallard, right? Like that isn't like a real place. You can't even find it on a map, but that's like sort of this like fantasy place that we're starting from to set up the conflicts or the decisions that the characters make. I thought it was similar to Underground Railroad in that way, where it was choosing real life situations and events, but setting it up so you can create the story and find meaning. I really like the characters. I think they're really well done, but I'm having a hard time going away from it being almost like a metaphor. The whole story being a metaphor for something. I'm not really sure since I'm not that far into it, but.
Well, I hope you stick with it. I think it'll be worth your time. And I would love to hear if anyone else has any ideas on what it might be a metaphor for, especially knowing that that Brit was told that there was a real town like this, and there were people that wanted to pass themselves off as maybe being white. And if anyone has any thoughts on what Brit was trying to say with that and what that metaphor is, I'd be interested in that. But Evelyn, thank you. I see Kara's got her hand up. Kara, may I unmute you? Are you with us?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Lisa's comment made me laugh because I finished the book 2 days ago, and when she said she didn't remember the ending, I was also like, wait, do I know the ending? I had forgotten it, Jeff, until you said it. So the ending, like, it's not just unmemorable for people who finished it a while ago, because I was like, how did it end? I just remember like the funeral, and then people did, I don't know. I remembered what had happened to the characters, but I had no idea what happened last. So
You sure this one?
yeah. One of the things I liked a lot that I wanted to comment on was Jude and Reese's relationship. And kind of like you said, Jeff, there was no like big like reveal that Reese is a trans man. I just thought for like, I don't know, like the time it felt very realistic. I mean, even now it's realistic. Like it's no one's business but theirs. There was no like melodrama where like they had to come out to like their families or reconcile with his. It just felt like an honest portrayal of a relationship. And I was like so relieved that they were together at the end of the book. Like I kept on waiting for something terrible to happen, not like necessarily like anyone dying, but just for like a fight to happen and them to break up and be with someone else. And so I just thought that was like nice. It was kind of like the heart of the book for me, was like them having each other. But I kind of wanted to address, it went down in the chat now because we were talking about the raise hand button, but Tom Z's question, I think it's really interesting. So if race is social or cultural construction is still a white woman, I would argue she's not, because she still thinks about her race constantly. Like, she is successfully living as a white woman, but like, she's not like confident in it. She's constantly worried about everyone finding her out. So to me, like, no, she's not like culturally white. Like, she's passing as white, but she knows she's not white. I don't think she feels white most of the time. So I don't even know if, like, in her own definition, she would say she was white, other than as a like defense mechanism. Like, yes, of course I'm white. How dare you? I think that if, like, her daughter is white, because her daughter was raised to believe she was white and never thought anything of it. It's kind of like how when people take those like 23andMe tests and they'll be like, oh, actually I have ancestors from Africa. I'm not white. And I'm like, you are white. If you have like some Native American DNA way back in your family, like, if that's not how you were raised, like, culturally you're white, you're a white person. I've never done those tests, but if I did and I found anything out, it wouldn't change anything about who I am currently as a person. So it's all about how you're raised. Like, in that sense, race is real because culture is real and the way we like behave and act is real, but I don't know. So I thought that was interesting, but to me the answer is easy. But if she had been raised in a white household and grew up thinking she was white, then I would say yes, like, she's white. The whole like, do you have a drop of like black blood in you is a very like imperialist mindset. It doesn't really change anything about who you are or anything like that. So I don't know, it's interesting. I'm reading a book, or I just finished a book today right now that's also kind of about a person who's very light skinned and about like his perceptions of himself and other people's perceptions of him. It's The Good Lord Bird, which they have a Showtime show about now, and the protagonist in the book is very light skinned, and there's sometimes conversations about whether he's white or not, and I don't know. So it's interesting. I think there's like a lot of good material out there for novels to explore.
Sarah, would that, do you think that would make a good Books and Bars book?
I would love to talk about it with everyone. I gracefully brought it up just now, so you could all let me talk about it. It's very, very, very good. And I haven't seen the Showtime show yet, but I would recommend The Good Lord Bird to anyone. It's like, it actually, Jeff, made me laugh out loud.
Nice. That's important and rare.
Yeah, it is. So I would recommend it.
I had it on a list for a while, and I can put it back on the list. I saw an episode or two of the show. It's Ethan Hawke as John Brown, and yeah, it's that. I mean, the episode I saw was great, and it did make me want to actually go back and read the book. So
Yeah.
Thanks for that rec. And thanks for answering Tom's question. I saw Tom Z in here. So if Tom figures out if he wants to raise his hand and answer his own question or put it in the chat, maybe he just wants to hear how all of you answer it, that's fine too. But I got Pete O'Grady with his hand up. Pete, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us, Pete.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I was I'm still clutching my pearls for some reason. Yeah, this book was phenomenal. I loved it, and I liked the ending because it was more like a European ending. It's not an American book ending, where they just they've taken the story as far as it goes, and then I do love the bouncing around time. That was fun, and then but the race thing is the thing that sticks with me the most. Because I was trying to get some friends of color of mine to join Books and Bars, and I'm still going to work on them, Jeff, because I think it would just be nice to get more people. But I think it was some of the aspects that I've heard from everyone is there's this phenomenon of when white friends are friends with people of color or black, that there's so often a betrayal, and it happens. It's like a thing. It's a regular conversation point of when is the white person going to go side with all the other white people and ditch me? And it's just heartbreaking. And I love it that they brought it out in this book. It's such a great thing to get out there, because it's not, you know, like my bubble. Most people are really good and aren't like that, but it's cool that they addressed it here and addressed it straight on. And, you know, that I love how when, you know, Stella was confronted with, that's where the whole race thing comes in. When she gets a black neighbor, and she gets someone who's actually been nicer to her than anyone else in that neighborhood ever was, and someone who's actually really interested in who she is, and yet that falls completely apart because she's more committed to keeping her illusion and lie going than she is, you know, to have any genuine impact. But it's funny how there's so much great stuff in here to talk about, and then I'll listen to others. It's just, you know, there's all kinds of identity things, and it was they happen to use race as a vehicle, but it's all like these two women have been so many identities, and it's amazing. You know, it's like there's such a breadth of coverage of things. And then the final thing I'll leave with which is kind of cool, is like agency, where even though Stella got all this, the privilegey things, but it imprisoned her more. And it's sort of like where it's amazing how both Desiree and Jude were able to liberate themselves from their circumstances. They found the identities they created for themselves really carried them into their own, you know, what I'd call at least a successful future, but at least in terms of they've landed on their own real identities, which is just really cool. And then is race a construction? That's a great question too. It's where, you know, clearly melatonin, like what difference does that make? You know, I mean, our blood types have more impact on our human construction than that. And so that's a social construct we're all going to have to keep working on forever. But why it matters is because we haven't gotten rid of racism. But I think when we're all Star Trek, I think then that you could explore whether that, you know, whether there's any meaning. But, you know, it's like all of our differences make us magic, really. So.
Thanks, Pete. Some great points. And one of the things that really stood out for me was when you point out that you hinted out Stella is the character who actually gets what she wants, but she seems to be the least realized and the least happy of any of the characters here. I mean, she set out, she had a goal, she made that happen, and she's the one who's questioning, you know, herself constantly, and seems, you know, the least sure of herself and the least happy. And I've read that Bennett said that was one of her goals, was to, I want to write about a character who, you know, gets the things they wanted, but then turns out to be not what they wanted. You know, how do you deal with that then, when everything you worked for, you've achieved, you succeeded, but it's not right. It doesn't feel right, and you're not happy. What comes next? And that's what she was doing with Stella. So
yeah, it's like all those lottery winners that never they regret ever winning the lottery because it just made their lives miserable. And surprisingly large number of people like that out there. I mean, I think it was like 50 or 60% of lottery winners later claim it was the worst thing that could happen to them.
Yeah, it's wild. I've heard that too, and I guarantee you, I promise I would be happy if I win. So if anyone, I'm just saying.
Yeah, if I played, I'd be more surprised than anyone if I won.
I saw Bonnie had her hand up, but it's not anymore. But Tom Zellman's hand is up. Tom's with us. Tom, could you unmute yourself and talk to us? You're the one who had the great question I put in the chat.
Yeah, let me start someplace else. You know, I was thinking about the paired sisters. So here's the egg, and it splits in two, and they become identical twins in life. And narratively, it seems like the real splitting takes place when the two girls see their father taken out and murdered by white guys before their eyes. And what do you do to follow that trauma? For Desiree, she marries, she has a kid, and things go badly. Her drift is back toward family, and she goes back to her mother. She attracts early. She's good friends with her daughter Jude, and her story is sort of maybe a more usual pattern. But Stella, what does she do when chaos hits? So her time is much worse, and she hides. She's the more fearful of the two, even as a child. And then the jobs at the DuPont's house, she's the one who's sexually abused by a white man. And so after that, what does she seek? She's looking for safety. And what is safety? Safety is living a white lifestyle, blending in and passing. And she's able to do that. But, you know, maybe it's kind of Freudian, but that kind of thing where you repress something, it's going to come back in some sort of form. She's never comfortable with her identity. Her identity is always a trouble spot, so that when Kennedy asks her, you know, why don't you ever tell me anything about your childhood, your family, the place you grew up? I was just trying to imagine today what it'd be like if from my mother, I never got any information about background, family, anything, you know, and I felt like my mother was lying to me the entire time. And it's like that, I think, gets passed down, so that from Stella to Kennedy, she seems like she's inherited all of this insecurity, and she becomes an actress, right? She's trying on different roles. She's trying, every year it's a different look. She just doesn't know who she is. And so she's, of course, very curious when she meets Jude, and she wants to know more. But it seems like that pattern of fear and hiddenness and loss of identity gets handed down through the generation. And that seems like the tragic part of the novel to me.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I had put something similar in the chat about how, yeah, there's these roles are being played. You know, there are everyone's, you know, I mean, her daughter is an actress, and she herself is, you know, she's playing a part here too, and trying on different, you know, ways to be. Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, when you set a story in this time frame. You know, the 80s, you can't, you know, it eliminates that whole idea. I mean, now, yeah, if your parent was, you know, if a child now had a parent who was a complete mystery, the kid would just, you know, Google the heck out of it and figure out about this parent, you know, or make the, you know, parent take a test or something, or look them up on Ancestry and find out. But the mystery would be more of something that you could self-solve, or at least, you know, maybe work or chip away at, and not just let the person go with, oh, you know, something really bad happened, and, you know, we just accept that, but we've seen no pictures, you know, we've met nobody, you know. It's like they were a blank slate until they came into life. I mean, yeah, that's the interesting thing about, we talked about her husband, and how, you know, Andrew brought up, I mean, that character, you know, he just, I don't know, he didn't care, or he just took her at her word and didn't want to go too deep into it because he knew it would upset her. But, you know, I certainly would be more interested in, you know, the person I was married in, and and knowing their past and their secrets.
Pretty shallow character. He represents money and gives her material things, and they go on trips. And you always feel like what he's getting from Stella is just sort of a performance, you know, just an act. And what kind of relation can be built on that?
Well,
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting too, because your original question of, what are you biologically in that? And I think Kara really hit it on the head where it was, she's partially white, right? She's trained herself to be, but she has this background. She literally saw her father murdered or beaten because of the color of his skin. And I think that because of that creates a situation where that's what makes her still Black. She struggled through something. She saw something horrific based on racism. And obviously to me, that's why she went the way she did. And I also thought the timelines almost, or the paths of each other's life went completely backwards. So Desiree was super unhappy. Jude was super unhappy, all these things. And Stella was super happy. I'm passing as white. I met this guy who treats me good. I'm getting all these things. And they slowly start to like cross over and go the opposite ways, because Kennedy was a great daughter, all of that. And then they start to split the older she gets, and, she starts losing friends, and she's identified as the person who does hang out at the Black lady's house. And that's not okay. So now she's ostracized. So I think that was really a complete diversion. And part of that was probably because she's like, I'm passing as white. And I just went off and freaked out on a Black child in front of my white child. I did exactly what hurt me when I was a kid. So then she tried to remedy it, and then she got herself in even more hot water. And then Desiree and Jude start off, we're poor, we're in a bad situation. They just grow from it. They're like, we've overcome so much, we're so happy. So I thought it was really interesting that someone said neither of them were happy, but I feel like they started off opposite and ended where each of the other began.
Thanks, Angela and Tom. I see the Closter couple has their hand up. I'm unmuting you guys. Welcome back.
Hey, it's Lisa this time.
Hey.
So I was just thinking too, when Tom was talking about Kennedy, and that, everybody's faking it some way or another. Stella makes this choice to choose white, and like, why not? She says, because that's the easier path for her, right? Things are going to be easier that way. And so it makes sense. And then we kind of feel bad for her because she's not really getting what she thought she would out of it. But Kennedy was kind of interesting. I went back to look it up because for some reason it was stuck in my mind on page 299 on the hardcover. Kennedy said, her whole life, in fact, had been a gift of good fortune. She'd been given whiteness, blonde hair, pretty face, a nice figure, rich father. She sobbed out of speeding tickets, flirted her way to endless second chances. Her whole life, I saw that, her whole life, a bounty of gifts she hadn't deserved. She could learn most of this, except for the bullet point. She'd been acting her entire life, which meant that she was the best liar that she knew, well, the second best. Because she had learned that her mom had lied about her backstory. But I was like, Kennedy did really have everything and had really no reason not to be super successful, and she didn't have to fake anything, and she could have, done whatever she wanted to in our social construct with the money and not being a person of color and all of those things. And she was just as screwed up as everybody else. So by the time you get to the end of the book and you're like, every character had their own problems, and depending on what you define their problems to be, they had their own obstacles,
Is one of your obstacles whatever Andrew is doing to your dog? Because I'm hearing something.
That's
Okay.
Kenny.
Not me.
Kenny's standing on the dog.
He's just very sad he doesn't get a treat. I'll go give him. I'm going to give him a treat, so no one worry, okay? The dog.
Okay. I thought you might have your foot on him or something and you didn't realize it. So, I want to talk about Kennedy because I think Kennedy is actually a character who grows a bit, and I really liked Kennedy and Jude's relationship. Of course, it starts out under false pretenses, but I do think that there is a bond there, and that's probably the closest familial bond that we're left with by the end of, even though they, they're not going to be like best friends, but they are going to kind of, check in with each other and maybe give each other a hard time every once in a while. But that's where, how we have people in our family that we call the glue, like they're the ones who make sure, oh, if you talk to cousin Tom, well, he's also been in touch with so, you know what I mean? And you might not talk to all of the family tree directly, but if you talk to the glue, informs you of what's going on and kind of also helps, do family reunions and stuff like that. So I see Kennedy and Jude being, glued a bit. They have a bit of that connection and as first cousins, and they're the ones that are going to keep, in touch. And maybe, if there's any future family stuff, it's going to be because that they have one of the better relationships by the end, I think, in this book. And of course, Jude's relationship with Reese is great, but I think.
So they actually, they have a biological. Those two characters have a biological relationship, but they really have no social, racial similarities. Their lives have been very, very different, and they're treated very different. So that's kind of an interesting thing too that she threw in there.
Yeah, I like it. I see some great hands up here, but since Rachel has not had a chance yet, Rachel G, are you with us? Can I unmute you?
Yeah, hi guys.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just thinking you guys were talking about how, some just things didn't really get together for the family and stuff, but I was really touched by the familiarity and closeness of Jude with Desiree by the end, when she's calling her in Minneapolis, when she goes to visit her, when Desiree feels slightly bad about calling her in the middle of the day about her grandmother's death, but Jude's like, I want to be there. I'm sorry I wasn't there for the end. And even though Jude doesn't feel as much of a connection with her grandmother, I just feel like the bond between the mother and daughter, I was happy to see that grow. That, there's a lot of siblings and parents that, have a lot of difficulties at certain stages. Some never grow out of it, some do. And I just thought that was the testament to the life that Stella gave up by always being uncomfortable, and always having secrets that, even though she seemed like she should have had a closer relationship with Kennedy, because, with Desiree working all the time or living with her, having to live with the grandma and early coming in and out all the time, and Jude's just bullying by the whole town, and Desiree not knowing how to handle it and keep promising. Like, I just thought that it was great that they ended up having the stronger relationship, and that it matured into something where Jude really appreciates her mom's situation now that she looks back on it a little bit more and with some maturity too, and that Desiree has really grown into herself and can then be a better mom to Jude too. And like, I just thought that was another thing of like the flipping, that because of Stella's always being on edge, the one time that she, could be close to the neighbor, she screwed it up by her reaction was trying to hide it earlier. I thought that was nice that by Desiree being true to herself, that made her relationship with Jude just more real and more long lasting and closer than Kennedy and Stella will ever be. No matter how much Stella, when she picks her up from the airport, like I'm just so happy to see her and maybe letting a little bit more in, but it's kind of too little too late to form too close of a bond at that point, with too many lies between them.
Yeah, it was interesting because there is that point at which, she finally does, tell her daughter and lets her in, admits to her. But then it seems like there's a step backwards taken, like, okay, I admitted it, but I'm still like, I'm not going all in on this. Like, we're not going to keep talking about this. I'm not going to like go to all these family things. Like, okay, you're never going to tell, your dad, my husband, it's just our secret. And there's not going to be like picnics. We're not going to get together. Okay. Like, I've made my choice and I can't go back. Although I was really touched by, I had a like go back and check that I heard it right, but there's a point at which, grandma's dying, and she says, she's kind of confused of which daughter is there and how long she's been there and stuff. But you find out that Stella did like come in and comfort her, and she did like hold her, and there was like the point at which, well, like, I know, no, Stella was in here. Stella did come to me like in the night, and that she did at some point during that stay. But that was a nice little, it was a touch, because you think she's confusing the two, but then you get, no, it actually was Stella. Do you guys remember that part that I'm talking about? And so I feel like she gave a little, but then there isn't that. And that's what we talk about with the ending maybe not being completely like, just handed up to you and all wrapped up neatly in a bow, because she doesn't go all the way. Then it's not like, okay, I'm back. I admit it all, this is who I am. It's like she can't, she shut it off, that part of herself.
Yeah, because I mean,
sad.
Most traditional stories, they, at least Stella and Kennedy would have showed up under, and tell Blake different reasons why they need to go suddenly to some place in the middle of nowhere without him, to like show up at the funeral. And
yeah,
so I thought that was interesting that it didn't happen, because you of course expect that to happen. I think someone talked about that earlier, but like the Kennedy knowing her mom enough now, maybe not liking it, but knowing her mom at that age, finally knowing, no, she doesn't want to know that the grandma died, and that when Jude tells her, hey, your grandma died, you tell your mom, and she's like, I don't think she'd want to know, and that, yeah. I thought that was an interesting choice too, that Kennedy and her mom have a relationship, but still not happy, but they understand each other a little bit more. Which that Kennedy's knowing how to handle her mom now a little bit.
Yeah, great points. Hey, Pete, you still with us?
I am. I'm here in Nevada at the same time. The Kennedy was I liked the character, and one of the reasons why I was kind of fond of the ending is I like how they just kind of she found her place selling real estate in California. That was her. Finally, she went through all these other identity type things, and then said, so all right, well, I'll just pretend to be good at real estate and just be there. But it was, and the other key Kennedy thing I really liked was, and also at the end, was where she described the relationship between her and her mother as there was love, but the only way they can communicate love was having these lies and secrets from each other. And so she never told her about Jude, never told her about the death of her mother. And I found that a great literary vehicle, because it's just like, only good writing ever delivers that kind of thing. Like, this is like, I would love to see this as like a mini series, but I'm wondering if it's just too unhappy. I mean, or it's too complicated but who knows, maybe Showtime will do something with it. But I just love that aspect about those two.
Yeah. Wait, why did you go to Showtime? Showtime can handle the really complicated stuff. Is it?
Yeah, the edgy stuff. Well, they did. Oh, I'd really go there is because they did Sweet Bitter, a book we did, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I watch more HBO than Showtime, but that's good. Good Lord Bird on Showtime. Showtime's getting a lot of plugs tonight in this group. That's really interesting. Product placement for Showtime.
I'm not very avant-garde. I watch all kinds of TV. I'm terrible.
Pete, no, that's great. I think that's great, and I like that you mentioned that part of you is in Nevada right now. So I think it's all of us. Probably a lot of us are refreshing to see if 264 becomes 270 right now. So I totally get it. If anyone sees the 270 and wants to shout it out, you know what? Unmute yourself and just completely interrupt this whole discussion the minute you got a 270. Anyone, feel free.
No, I will, and it's Clark County that's coming in, which is Las Vegas, by the way.
All right. Well, you know what? If I'm a gambling man, I'm gonna bet we're gonna hit 270.
Well,
All right.
our commonplace, I'm a union guy, so we can, Las Vegas is just heavily unionized too, so.
There you go. All right, the Closter family now they've given a treat to the dog. Let's see what they got. Closters, we're back with you.
So two things real quick. I thought it was a great shout out for the University of Minnesota that, you know, that the only medical school she could get into was the University of Minnesota.
I thought that too. I know.
It's like,
And it's not easy to get into.
But in any case, I love the Minnesota reference. But I wanted to mention Adele, which is the mother, who's a very conflicting character. You know, she is
The grandma.
that's the grandmother, Stella and Desiree's mother. So there's a lot of things to not like so much about Adele. You know, she forces both of her daughters to drop out of high school in order to work and support the family, which eventually pushes them to leave to New Orleans. She also does, you know, she's also a bigot herself. She you know, does not like Sam, knew he was going to be bad from the start. Turned out to be true, but she also doesn't like Early. She ran him right off and all that. And but in addition, she is this tragic character who had all of her very best years early on. Leon, I think, was her husband, and she had a wonderful relationship with him. And she basically loses everything. And she doesn't seem all that bitter about it in the end, which is an odd way for someone to end up in her situation. I mean, you know, she loses one of her daughters basically completely, and you know, is disappointed in what happens to Desiree, and her husband is murdered, and that's kind of just the way life is in rural Louisiana for someone like her. But meanwhile, she has time to be racist against people who are darker than herself. It's a really strange. I don't even know really what to make of that character. But I just thought I would point out that I thought that there was a lot going on there, and that you know, at the end I really liked the character, and you know, had good feelings about where she ended up. But she certainly was not this kind of heroic type of person all the way through that you would typically, you know, apply to a matron the way that she was. I mean, it was an odd thing. So I'd be curious about if anyone else had any thoughts on that.
You know, and do you think it's another one of the reasons why, you know, Stella, why it wasn't, you know, such a big deal for her to break from her? I mean, I'm thinking how hard that must have been to completely just, you know, give up on your mom and your sister or your twin like that. And is it because maybe, you know, she didn't feel that loved by her, and maybe she felt like, you know, she wasn't totally there for her, and it was going to be okay for her to make this break, because it wasn't, you know, that touchy-feely, cuddly sort of loving relationship. Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, Stella has, you know, prospects. She's interested in going to college. She's, you know, has these things, and events totally out of her control prevent her from following those you know, aspirations. And interesting, I mean, I guess interestingly, she does end up, you know, going to college, and she ends up, you know, interacting with the kind of people that she was interested in interacting with, you know, albeit delayed, through a totally different means. You know, she it seems like, you know, she kind of, Stella used what she had. She was very practical, you know, transactional, or whatever you want to say. It was like, well, you know, I happen to be light skinned, and that allows me to do this, so why not? I mean, what, you know? And Desiree never seemed to go that direction. You know, she seemed to have more of a, you know, that she, you know, she didn't think of it that way. You know, she didn't have an instinct to try to pass, even though she could have. you know, obviously they were identical twins, so she theoretically could have done anything that Stella did. But it was Stella that had the initiative or the desire to try to improve, you know, from her perspective, improve where she was at, and you know, and it was of course denied that. But I did. Tom Z mentioned that both Stella and Desiree had a substantially different reaction to the way they reacted to their father's death and that trauma. You know, they headed separate directions, even though they were genetically the same. And you know, I think there's something to that as well. You know, just that, you know, to you know, I find it amazing how someone like Adele could be shown as not being all that bitter when she had a lot to be bitter about. Like she didn't, you know, you didn't get the idea that she was really offended that the world had dealt her this pretty bad hand in the end. That's an odd thing. If you know, if Lisa was murdered in front of me, you know, wrongly, and then both my kids decide to leave.
But you know what part of it is though too, I think, is it, you have to remember the age of these people and when all this stuff was happening, because Adele would have been born in 10 or something.
10s, 20s.
I mean, she was growing up in that, you know, yeah, you know, there's probably a bunch of women who have gone through the same experience of having their husbands killed. I mean, it was a different time, and how she reacted to it, I think, is part of that. And with the daughters too, you know, that was the 50s or 60s, right? When Stella and Desiree were getting of age.
Yep.
I guess the point was just that, you know, Adele had every reason to be really an angry, bitter person. To some extent she was, but you know, really at the end, it didn't seem like she felt like she was dealt that bad a hand. And you know, other people might have a different interpretation of that, but that's kind of what I felt. I'm not sure if that's the author taking license there or if that's a real thing, but it was interesting.
One thing that you said that was interesting was when you said if Lisa was wrongly murdered, like there's a situation where she could have been correctly murdered.
Yeah, when I murdered my wife for a good reason.
If somebody wrongly murdered my wife, as opposed to the hit that I put out on her, or like, you know, but like if he was wrongly murdered, I would be upset. And it was just the part that.
Honest though, I felt like, so if someone was murdered as a result of some kind of transactional crime, like they were shot to death on the street for their wallet or something like that, that would be really tragic. But the idea of having a mob show up, drag you out, you know, shoot you a few times, you go to the hospital, and they're like, we didn't finish the job, so now we're going to go to the hospital and kill you. I mean, that's a whole different level.
Yeah.
Being murdered than just like being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's, I guess, what I was saying. It's kind of.
No, you know, I get it. I give you a hard time because you weren't giving Kenny a treat, so that's why I was giving you a hard time until you get out the treats. I see Donna has her hand up. Donna, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everyone. And I find this discussion so fascinating because I think it affirms how complex and interesting and layered these characters are. About Adele, I just felt she's really kind of a survivor, and as was just mentioned, I think she's pretty down to earth about accepting that this was just the way it was going to be for people of color. And I've just in the last week been watching the Watchman new series, and you know, when you see what life was like at certain times in history for Black people, and they could lose loved ones by lynch mobs and whatnot, and they just somehow tried to move on. And I think, and if any of you are watching Fargo, I mean, my gosh, I mean, you know, there are just things that can happen when there's power and control and mobs and all of this, and it's horrible stuff. But my gosh, it seems like the women particularly are just, well, I lost my man, but you know what? I'm just gonna try to survive and hope a better life comes along for my daughters. I thought the Vanishing Half title was so interesting because, you know, two halves of the same egg. And so I thought, okay, it's really just about these twins and, you know, they're separated and so on. But then when you get into Stella and she's got her, she says several times about, and we've commented on this about, she has her two selves. She's got her, the life she's trying to live and portray herself as. And then there's the part that she still believes, understands is still kind of fundamentally who she really is and how she tries to reconcile those two. And then you have all those other characters. You have the transgender Reese, you know, so he's has kind of different selves in a way. And then you have his friend Barry who dresses up, you know, it's as a, does the drag world. And, you know, I just thought there were so many levels on which that title became just really fascinating to me. And the last thing I'll say is that when we find out there's this book about identical twins, I was just so glad there was never a scene where they traded places. You know, if this was if this was going to be like, you know, Parent Trap or Patty Duke or something, you know, where there was always going to be the good student and then the one that was kind of wild, and then oh yeah, they're going to pass off as each other at some point and trick somebody. No, good. It never happened. It was so much more sophisticated of a book than that. And so perfectly paced. You know, every chapter, I just was looking forward to going back and seeing the year and where the story was going to pick up. So there were those, and how the different situations got revealed slowly. So it took us a while to find out what happened in New Orleans. Why did Stella, you know, all of a sudden leave like that? Well, we find that out later. And we find out later what actually happened with, well, really all the characters. You know, it was just really beautifully written. It was, I think it was one of the most engaging books we've read. I just wallowed. I just loved picking it up again and going further. And so thanks for putting it on the list, Jeff.
Thank you, Donna. And I'm so glad that you brought up all of the ways that the Vanishing Half as a title worked for the, you know, different situations and characters here. It's one of the things I wanted to discuss tonight. I agree with you completely. And you found, I mean, I think you found ways that it applies even more than I thought of, which is really cool. Yeah, it's one of my favorites that we've read this year. And that was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask, although I was probably going to wait till the end of December, but start thinking in terms of the, you know, it'll be close to, I don't know, 20 or so books by the end of the year that we'll have read together. What are some of the ones that really stuck with you? What are some of your favorites? And that'll help guide us maybe with the type of books that we pick next. But this one hit me similarly the way Dutch House did. Just an author that I hadn't read yet, that once I did, I want to read more by them. And I was really glad that, you know, it's a new to me female author, because I'm always looking for, you know, new voices. And, you know, Ann Patchett obviously has been around for a long time, but this is only her second book. And now we get to see, I mean, this is pretty accomplished, I think, for a second book. So I'm interested in reading The Mothers and then seeing what she does next. Anyone else have anything on Brit Bennett's style? One of the things that she has said is that she's not a moralist and she never wants to judge any of her characters. And so she just kind of puts it out there. And that's maybe why there isn't those expected big moments of like, and now the reveal of this person is, you know, a transgender man, you know, that sort of a thing. She doesn't judge her characters, and she's just like, I just want to have them, you know, as realistic people in a situation. And she's really interested in multi-generational stories, especially dealing at its core with mothers and daughters. That's where she starts. But I see we have some new hands up here. Allison has her hand up, a fresh hand. Allison, may I unmute you? Are you with us? Talk to us, please. Allison. Allison? Allison? No, we'll come back to you, Allison, if you're not ready.
I think
All
she
right,
just went on
Evelyn.
mute. I think she just went on
Oh.
mute and came back. Try again, Allison.
Allison?
Never mind.
No? Okay. I think I see her there, but her hand's no longer up. If she wants to come back, that's great. Evelyn, are you still with us?
Yes, hi. I think if it's the right Allison, I think her like internet's pretty bad. But anyway, I hope.
Oh
we get-
yeah. We
Um,
usually have to ask Allison to turn off the video so that we can hear her. Yep. So maybe if
Yeah.
Allison, if you're having a problem with your connection and you want to come back in, remember it oftentimes works for us, Allison, if you just go audio. So try that if you want to come back. But Evelyn, go for it.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back just real quick on the title, The Vanishing Half. Of course, I don't know if there's a titular line or not because I have not finished the book. But there is a part that really struck me that I thought connected to the title, and this is when Jade goes with Reese and she tries to prove to him that Mallard isn't on the map, and they're at the library. And they're looking at a map of the US, and she says to him, "When I was little," she said, like 4 or 5, "I thought this was just a map of our side of the world. Like there was another side of the world on some different map. My daddy told me that was stupid. He'd brought her to a public library, and when he'd spun the globe, she knew he was right." But she watched Reese trace along the map, part of her still hoping that her father was mistaken somehow, and there was still more of the world waiting to be found. Like there was more on the flip side of the piece of paper, like the vanishing half of the world that she isn't experiencing. And maybe that's what Stella was trying to experience, the part that maybe, you know, the world where people didn't have to worry about their fathers being, you know, killed needlessly just because of the color of their skin. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was very relevant. The title was very relevant. And so I mean, all these characters are perhaps trying to find the half of the world that you know they can't see, and maybe they're realizing maybe it's all part of one whole thing. I don't know. But I thought that was interesting.
I like it. That's another great point. And I remember that section and really liking that, and that image of, you know, the missing part of the world. So I think that's really great. Kara, you still with us?
Yeah. I lost my train of thought though. So
Okay,
I was
we can
distracted
come back
'cause I
to
was
you.
looking for Fleischman is in Trouble on the library website.
Fleischman is in
So-
Trouble. It's also available on our bookshop page, but yes, you will be able to find it at the library, thanks to the Friends of the St.
I'll
Paul
recite it
Library.
again and I'll try to remember what I had.
You know, I see, I don't think Beth Burns is in the room, but she represents the Friends. She was going to be here tonight. I will give another shout out though. I live in Minneapolis, but I use the St. Paul Library because you can get stuff better and faster, and I love it. And they also don't charge you late fees, which is really nice, especially in this time. Yeah, they've become, you know, my new video store. It's awesome. And I get audiobooks from the library. I love it. But that said, if you can't get the book from the library, bookshop.org is how Books and Bars is selling right now. And of course, we still love and support Subtext and Moon Palace if you want to pick up through them. They were the ones who gave me the idea for a bookshop, and Matt from Subtext helped me set up the shop there. So it was with his blessing, and Bookshop does share profits with local indie bookstores, and you can select which ones you want the money to go to, or they will spread it out to ones in your area. But yes, Fleischman is in Trouble by Taffy Brodesser Ackner is her last name, is December 2nd's book. November 18th, our next one is The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. She wrote Station 11, one of my favorites that we've done for Books and Bars. And I'm currently reading that, and it is a little, it's wild and weird and a little confusing, but I'm into it. I'm in but you have to give a little bit more to that one. It doesn't just give it to you. So, but I think it'll be worth it. And then Ready Player 2 by Ernest Klein, the sequel to Ready Player 1, is our last book of 2020, and I will be glad to be done with 2020. But I have so many great books ideas for 2021. Many of them came from you guys and from other, places where I read reviews and I check out part of the book. And most of them I have not read. I've read a few of them. And I dropped last time that we will definitely do John Irving in January. So I believe that one's January 20th will be The Hotel New Hampshire by John Irving. And I keep changing my mind about the start of January, but I think it's going to be Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz, which you guys seem to like murder mysteries. I'll tell you something, this is a really good one. This one is two murder mysteries in one. It starts off with, there's a note from the publisher, and then it's the book, and it's a mystery book with this like classic mystery character. And then it goes back to the publisher and then commenting on what you've read. And there's two mysteries. There's a mystery to solve in like the book that she's publishing. And then there's the mystery in real life in the publishing world, so to speak. And they have to do with each other. And now it's become a series. And there's going to be PBS Masterpiece Theater for PBS is going to do a series on Magpie Murders. But anyway, I think it's great. I think you guys really enjoy it, especially if you liked when we did 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. So I think Magpie Murders for early January, and then Hotel New Hampshire for late January. And then check the bookshop.org list for about 18, 20 other books that I'm thinking about. I keep looking at the list on my bulletin board right here, and I'm excited, but I don't want to give it all away. But there's good stuff on there. It's very exciting. Tom Zellman's got his hand up though. Tom, you still with us? I'm unmuting you. Talk to us, Tom. Can you unmute?
Yeah, this goes back to your question earlier on when you asked about style and what she's like. As I was reading it, I felt like I was reading a real page turner. I could see why this is on the bestseller list. At the same time, I was super impressed by passages that were poetic, philosophical. Surprised to learn that she's as young as she is, because I kept thinking, wow, I'm racing through this book, but it definitely feels like a book that deserves another reading.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I don't know why, but I too just surprised by her age, like wise beyond her years. And I think it bodes well for her future, and I'm excited to read more by her. So yeah, it was, it was like there was a mystery, but it wasn't really, like I almost felt like the early storyline was going to drive more of it, and there was going to be like this big reveal, and here it is, and he finally finds her and he knows her and stuff. And I like that it really was, about this family and how, we deal with trauma and how it can tear you apart, and how you can put yourself back together in different ways and create your own family. And
I felt that there was bound to be a convergence after this big split. Everything had to come together, but I guess maybe the message is you have to wait a generation.
Yeah, maybe. Does anyone else have any thoughts or things that we haven't touched on yet? You
Can
guys
you hear
read the
me?
book. Is there? Yes.
No, it's Allison
Hi,
speaking.
Allison.
So I'm not going to go with video, but I'm on my
Awesome.
phone this time.
Excellent. We can hear you.
Okay,
Talk to us,
excellent.
Allison.
So I feel like I could tell in the writing that Brit was a young writer, because I feel like I work with high schoolers, and I'm always just so impressed by youth and how they have like a different perspective on the world. And I feel like that shined through in just her respect of where other people are coming from, and that like kind of knowledge, I think, just in respecting people's privacies or letting them tell their own stories, or even just kind of like define their own identities too. I really appreciated that. This story reminded me, I've been trying to go back and read some of the classics, and I recently read Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. And that was an amazing book. And it talks like the main character goes and lives in a Black community way back. I don't even know if it was like the 40s. But that writing style really reminded me, like this book's writing style really reminded me of that, of just like telling people stories. I'm also reading My Grandmother's Hands. It's about racial trauma. And I kept thinking about that and how this story about like how racial trauma gets passed down through generations, kind of like epigenetics, and how like trauma lives in our bodies. And I thought about that, about Kennedy, and how she didn't know her whole racial identity. And like, how did that show up, and how much of like her story is connected to like racial trauma that's being passed down over time. So those were some of my thoughts.
Thank you, Allison. I'm glad that you bring up My Grandmother's Hands. I'm interested in your thoughts on that as a possible book club selection.
It's early. I'm just starting to read it, and I'm doing it with like a work book study. But I like it so far because I like that author. I like the like ideas that he presents, and I like thinking about trauma so much. So much of trauma we think of, or just therapy in general, we think of like cognitive behavioral stuff, but really there's so much about body work that we need to do too. So I feel like the book itself is going to be healing, and it's nice to read a different book, like trying to become more anti-racist, trying to be more racially conscious, reading a book like that gives some like different ideas about how to improve my awareness. So I like it so far. I think it would be, it's definitely like a clinical book so far. So it might be a little, I don't know, I would read it for book club.
Okay. Thanks for that. Kara, is your hand still up or up again, or is that from before?
I remembered what I was going to say.
Okay, go for it.
It was in response to what you said earlier about Bennett not having judgment for her characters.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily disagree. Like, I don't feel like she's like personally condemning. I don't think she's really placing judgment on them, but I feel like narratively, there's judgment placed on them, or at least like the focus of the novel kind of shows where like her like interests and like preferences lie, because Desiree and Jude do seem to get more of a focus, and then they're also the ones that get a happy ending. I don't know, like maybe this is a discussion, like is it possible for someone to be happy if they're living a lie like Stella is? But I feel like if there wasn't any judgment, Stella would maybe have had like a better shot at having a happy ending. And then Kennedy got like much less focus compared to Jude. And it's not that I think the author was condemning of Kennedy, she was compassionate to Kennedy, but narratively, I think there was less interest in Kennedy and her story. And so I just kind of felt like maybe there is some, unconscious bias that Bennett has towards her characters, because to just say that like I view them all equally, and I was like, well, in the narrative it doesn't seem like they're all equal, but then also this could be my bias as a reader because I was so much more interested in Jude and Desiree.
Okay, great point. I think when she called herself that she said, I'm not a moralist, and she doesn't bring judgment, but yes, I do agree that I think that we see, I mean, Stella does seem to be less happy and less fully realized, and maybe her decision is written as this wasn't the right choice, or was it? And that's why I posed to the group. You bring up a great point. I would love to hear from anyone here that's living a lie, but is also happy. Feel free to chime in. Anyone would love to admit to living a lie? You don't have to tell us what the lie is. Maybe the lie is I like book club, but are you happy? Then maybe you do like book club. So see, I got you. But no, anyone living a lie that's also happy, let me know. I don't know. Is that possible?
I mean, Jeff, not to get too personal or whatever, but like I'm non-binary, so I'm like in the trans community, and I'm telling all of you this now, so I'm not living a lie, but I regularly don't tell people this and like let people assume my gender. So I think someone could accuse me of living a lie, but I'm also happy. So I don't know if like I'm wondering, like, is not being fully honest about yourself at all times living a lie?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think anyone expects us to be completely honest about ourselves at all times. I mean, we have different selves, different sides that we show, and we only let, certain people in that are close to us, and we're not expected to. I mean, but I don't think that you're going out necessarily. Oh, I don't know. You're not like intentionally misrepresenting yourself, are you? You're just not. You're just not. You don't
You're
have to
letting
tell
people
everyone.
assume things, right? In some sense, Stella is just letting people assume things about her.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, she's like not telling anyone she's not white, but like white people couldn't tell. So, when she first passes as white and like pretends to be white, she's not like going out of her way to lie. She's just like, oh, like people don't seem to know. I think I can get away with this.
But at the same time, she does in a point where I think it started off like that.
Yeah.
Where she didn't want to get caught. And of course, if she was caught, then there would be a lot more repercussion back then, right? But at the same time, you start thinking about, well, where are you from? She had told Kennedy once she was from Mallard, but then as she got older, she's like, no, I'm from this other town. She's like, no, it started with an M. She lied to everyone where she was from. So,
I mean,
and then the lies of, I guess Mallard was still a racist town, but even knowing she was Black, she was lying about being super racist, right? I think she exercised a lot of that, but she also made the point that I don't think she was actually racist as much as at some point in time, they pointed out that she noticed Black people would notice that she wasn't white. And so she ostracized them. So when she was like, no way can that Black family live in our neighborhood, it was because she was so worried that they would recognize her for what she was, but then she befriended her because suddenly it wasn't a threat. They didn't notice. And she felt awful. So I think there was so much cover up and a lot more lying. To your point, you admit the truth, but you also don't go, no, I'm super straight and I am this and I do this and no, I have the he, she pronouns and all of that stuff, right? Like you don't go out of your way to tell other people do these things to hide behind it. You admit the truth, but if someone would ask you, you'd be super honest about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not entirely arguing that Stella's not lying. Like Stella takes it to a level where she's lying to like, her family and her daughter about things that like, her daughter arguably has a right to know. But like, I do think if we're just talking about like, if Stella hadn't taken that far and did just be like, well, I'm going to like get this job opportunity and I'm going to just let them make assumptions. Like, she took it to a completely different level. So I would agree she is lying, but we want to get into like, Judith Butler and like the presentation of the self, like, are any of us not lying about who we are? Like, what is the self? What is like presentation of anything? So I don't know if we're going to get deep into it, Jeff. You opened a can of worms about identity.
I would also like to go back to Blake for just 2 seconds and say that I think he was super naive. And even when things were coming up, like when it was exposed that she was who she was, and he's like, oh no, he's like, oh, she's like, oh, this is what it is. Someone lied to our daughter. And he's like, okay. I think that comes from being a white male in America, being able to be like, oh, no one would lie to me and I would notice because I'm so smart and, crazy things, stuff like that. So I think there was a very, very big part of white male in that society. Nobody can take me, therefore I would have noticed or I couldn't have been duped. So.
Thanks. I like the idea of, I heard something in there about someone describing themselves as being super straight. No, I'm super straight. Yeah. No, that someone. I want to know. Does anyone else? Please. There's a lot of stuff in the chat that I didn't personally see. Is there anything from the chat that you guys want to hear the rest of the group discuss? Any outstanding questions from there? We're going to go back to the Kloster family while we wait. So here we go. Klosters, talk to us. I can't wait. Is it going to be Kenny this time? Maybe Kenny gets a chance.
No, I think that it's me, Andrew. And it's not Kenny. He's sleeping after his trees, sleeping it off. I really feel like this author had so many layers going on. It was so interesting because there's a character in here that actually speaks to this specific thing. So Stella's living a lie, but she she starts to break out of her shell, and she starts teaching statistics, and she runs into this woman who's very involved in the women's liberation movement, and she's given her, you know, crap about how, you know, she's not living up to what she's doing. She's already, you know, she's already running these, you know, this multi-layer kind of you know, scam, more or less. But you know, she's like, you know, you can't let your husband treat you that way, and he's, you know, and so I think that, you know, from in various ways, the you know, how someone is either oppressed or not oppressed is really well done in this book, because obviously Stella has made it from the standpoint of the material, from being able to pass and getting all of the entitlements that come with being white, but yet she's seen by this other white woman as not really measuring up in really fully extending herself, you know, to being her true self, or, you know, and all that. I thought that was really impressive, that subtlety that was in that section of the book, where, you know, if only that professor had kind of understood what was really going on, what would she really have thought of this person that was sitting in front of her? I mean, would she be impressed? Would she be horrified by the lies that she tells, or the audacity that she has out there? You know, it's, and the other thing I would say is just that both of these characters, when they leave home, they're very young. And you know, the idea of being offered an out, you know, you get to be something other than what you're just supposed to be, was I think one of the most basic things that humans can understand, which is, you know, you feel put into this certain place in a certain time with these certain expectations. And wouldn't we all just like to be able to, you know, be able to free ourselves from all of those expectations, and be removed from wherever we came from, to start anew with a blank slate where no one knows us, or no one believes that we're, you know, below them, or whatever the case is. And I really thought that on many different layers, the author really nailed it in terms of offering a lot to think about.
Thanks, Andrew. And I totally agree with you. And this has been a really, really good discussion. I want to make sure, though, that everyone got their chance. I don't see any hands up. Hopefully, you guys got a good conversation in the chat. I will always download and read the chat at my leisure, and I will try to post that along with this video when I make some cuts. November 18th, the link is in here for the Glass Hotel. I put a little description about it in the chat also. I may be underselling it when I'm talking about it being a little difficult and weird right now, but I'm just getting into it. So I'm reading along with you. But I think it'll, based on her previous stuff, I have high hopes for it. So that is the 18th. And you're loving it, Lisa? Good.
I just finished. Andrew hasn't started it yet, and there's gonna be a lot to talk about.
Awesome. Well, that's what we need. Yeah, I love Station 11. And Station 11 is the book that I thought of the most when we were in early lockdown and really heavy quarantine earlier this year. It was the first book that it really related, I think, to what was going on with a global pandemic, basically wiping out a lot of people, and then kind of a post-pandemic world. It's pretty frightening. But Glass Hotel, different story, and her latest book. And then, like I said, I mentioned some of the other ones for December and moving forward. Really excited that you guys are still with us. And you know what? By the next time we talk, who knows? We might even know who the president is. I mean, there's so many things that could change. It's very exciting. I mean,
oh, and you wanted updates of good news here?
Yes.
There's inside baseball coming in from that Georgia's in play, Pennsylvania's back towards Biden, and we'll probably be getting really good news from Nevada within like 20 minutes.
Oh, I thought they were waiting till tomorrow morning, Nevada. Are they going to go early tonight?
Well, there's some poll counter that's tweeting to me about what's going on there, but yeah, they might have stopped it till tomorrow morning. But anyway,
Georgia has guaranteed that they will have it completed tonight by midnight, according to earlier. So
yeah.
Who's staying up? Stayed up
way too late
Midnight
last
Eastern?
night.
I overserved
Yeah.
myself last night. I'm gonna do it again. I can't
That was
stand
tough.
this.
We were watching it and we had to take a break and go watch something else for a while. It was like, it was too soon to, we just knew it was going to be back and forth, up and down. But what a year, what wild times we're living in. So I don't know. Thanks for being with us together in it though. Thank
but
you.
I want to send one last point
ahead.
to Kara's thing,
Yeah.
although Kara has left, I think. But I think she made her thing about like, whether you self-identify with someone else, like as a white man with this, last name O'Grady, and I'm Irish and I have Irish citizenship. I feel like I'm surrounded with assumptions all the time, and I get like racists and bigots come out to me all the time with their stuff, and I just like, you don't know who you're talking to, and it's kind of from the other side. It's like you should come to one of my parties because you realize like you're the machine I rage against. So I don't know. It's interesting because it's this. I think there is a distinction between a moral compass and an identity, which I think what kind of defines the times, which makes this book so compelling too. So sorry, throwing that in.
Thanks, Pete. And I'd like to come to one of your parties sometime. I think
Oh,
that's,
I'll put you on the invite list.
all right.
Roll.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for everybody sharing their thoughts and perspectives on the book. Thank you to Angela for co-hosting tonight. And I look forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks. And keep sending me ideas and keep in touch and do whatever you have to remain sane and healthy and and mentally fit during these times. So I want to see you all with us. Stay safe, and I'll see you in a couple weeks. Good night.